The only advice I can think of is advice that was given to me over the years. Just keep your mind and your heart open. If you're feeling that there's something out there that you're wanting to do, research it, read about it, to think about it, to talk to people. And it's going to click at some point, just like it did for me. I was in this dilemma of, I know I want to start a business. I'm ready to start something on my own. I don't know exactly what it is. These are some things I'm interested in. This is what's been affecting my life personally. And all of a sudden I saw an intersection,
Yeah.
and it literally was a light bulb moment. I don't know if that will happen for everybody, but don't give up. Listen to your instincts, listen to your internal voice, whatever it is that you call that for yourself. If nothing else, you learn something new, and maybe something bigger will come of it.
You're listening to the Pro Organizer Studio podcast with Melissa Klug and Jen Obermeyer. Thank you so much for joining in. Our mission is to broaden the horizons of savvy business women in the organizing industry by instilling confidence and inspiring authenticity. You'll gain new insight into strategies designed specifically for professional organizers. So now, let's get started.
Hey everybody, it's your podcast co-host Melissa. And before we get started with my interview with Julie Aderhold of Healthy Home Organizing, who's going to tell you all about her cool niche and how she built her organizing business, the way that I met Julie was through our Organizing Essentials course, which is open now for a short period of time for you to enroll. It closes on November the 4th. If you have ever thought about joining a course in the Pro Organizer Studio family, and we have something for everyone, whether you have been in business for 10 years or 10 minutes, or it is just a dream of yours, we have something for you. But Organizing Essentials is a course that comes straight from my heart. It is built from me working with hundreds of clients over thousands of hours in multiple states on every project you can possibly imagine. What I want more than anything is for you to have that feeling that the minute a client opens the door, no matter what is behind that door, you know how to handle it. Whether it's a closet, a garage, a basement, a kid's playroom, maybe you have a client with a pile of paperwork that has been sitting around for 20 years. I have literally been there. We teach you everything that you can imagine so that you are ready to go in that client's house. We also build a community by having a Zoom every month. We talk about client situations, all sorts of stuff, and we have a private community where you can get coaching and ask questions. We built this course to be very accessible to everyone. It is $249 and we have a payment plan. And what we would love is for you to take this investment and go make that back in about 3 seconds with one happy client. We would really love to have you in this course in our community. I would personally be honored to be able to teach you and have you in our group and get to know you. So if you want some details, please check it out. You can go to the show notes wherever you are listening to this, or go to proorganizerstudio.com, click courses at the top of the page, or you can email me at hello@proorganizerstudio.com. And I really, really hope to see you on our next Zoom. Let's get started. We are back with our series where we are talking to our community of organizers. I love talking to people about their organizing careers, how they got started, what they're doing. And our guest today, I'm extremely excited for you to hear her story because she has a very interesting niche. And one of the things we talk about a lot is, hey, how can you use something that is important to you in your life and also apply it to your organizing business? So I want her to talk a little bit about some of her business, but I would like to welcome my friend Julie to the podcast. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Good. Excited
Good.
to have you and excited to talk to you. So give us your whole story. Like, how'd you get started in organizing? What has your path been?
Interest in organizing has been in my brain for a long time. I read Marie Kondo's book way back when it was published, and did the whole thing in my head where if she ever comes to the US, I'm going to, want to be one of her students. Well, that didn't happen. Other things happened in life. I had a different career, things like that. Have always sort of helped friends organize. Then I also was diagnosed a few years ago with something called celiac disease. So there's a reason I'm telling you this. It might sound like a segue off into nowhere land, but it is part of my
Very
story.
relevant. Very relevant.
Thank you. And so what happened is I was diagnosed about 3 years ago, and the only treatment for celiac disease is a completely 100% gluten-free diet. And gluten is in about 80% of the food in the United States. It's this very overwhelming initial kind of shock when you're not expecting it. And I found that there was a little bit of a gap in the medical community. Great at diagnosing. I had a great doctor, met with a nutritionist, dietitian. But once you do that, you're kind of just thrown out there, and you think that every single thing you touch is going to have gluten on it. And so part of where suddenly I had this epiphany in my head when I was thinking about starting an organizing business, and yet I also wanted to help people who were diagnosed with celiac disease. And I really have two businesses. I have my organizing business because not everybody has celiac disease, right? And there's a large market for that in my community, and there's lots of people who need help. So I have all different types of clients, but I also have this niche where I work with people who've been diagnosed, and I meet with them and we go through a series of typically 4 sessions. And one of them is just providing some information that is legitimate for them so that they're not just out Googling everything and getting a lot of false information. So there's several things we do, but one of the things that we do is we organize their kitchen. And the reason we need to do that is because of cross contact. So most of the time when someone's diagnosed, the entire family typically does not have it. And it's very difficult for people who aren't diagnosed with it, and not always even recommended in the medical community, to go on to gluten-free diet. So you're having to have both gluten-containing items and gluten-free items in your household, and you can't let them get into contact with each other. I'll give an example that might be easy for people to understand. Flour has gluten in it, unless it is a flour that doesn't contain gluten, like almond flour or something. So you can imagine when you're baking or cooking and you are putting flour in your sauces or in your cookies or whatever, those little grains can fly
They
in
get
the air and get all
everywhere and
over.
they're in the
Yes.
air and they're all over. Yeah.
Yep. So one of the things that I also do then is help people figure out how to organize their kitchens so that they can avoid that cross contact, and which items they are going to need doubles of and which items they can just wash and use for both types of food. So there's a whole process that goes into organizing your kitchen. So that is one of my niches.
And I love that. I really want people to hear this because even if you have obviously a personal connection to this, but I have
Right.
multiple really good friends with celiac, and all of us have people in their lives that have food allergies, that type of thing, whether it's peanut allergy, anything like that. I love that you do this because it is very specialized and it's very personal to you. But any organizer can take a look at this and get some education on it and say, I would like to be educated so that I can help a client. I don't have any of those issues medically, but I had a client, I know I've told you the story before, but
Yep.
I had a client that the client was diabetic, daughter had celiac, son had a tree nut allergy, other son had a peanut allergy, but not a tree nut allergy, and husband had nothing and just wanted to eat regular food.
Right.
And their pantry was one of the most stressful things I have ever had to organize because she's like, I want a shelf for son number one. I want a shelf for
Yep.
son number two. I want a shelf for my daughter. I have to have pans over here. And it was so complex, but I loved solving that problem because
Right.
that was an organizational challenge that was also a health challenge. So
Right.
just encourage people to listen to you and say like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about these things. This is
Right.
how I could be value added as an organizer.
Right. And on the flip side of that, I also enjoy the challenges that come along with this job. And I have a client who has ADHD, and that was a learning process for me. And I loved that. And it actually kind of made me think in my head that really a lot of what we do is lean manufacturing for the home. That's
Yeah.
what I like to call it. And there's a lot of things that you do as an organizer that actually don't just help people who have ADHD. It can help anybody because you're really taking out steps that are unnecessary or organizing in a way that is much more efficient. So there's that's what's great about this business is yes, someone can absolutely learn about allergies and celiac disease and help people in their kitchen, but then we can learn other things as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and one of the things I love about the client that you're talking about that had ADHD is you came to our community and said,
yep.
hey, I have this client, and we were able to brainstorm with you. Like some of us said, oh, I had a client with this presentation of ADHD, because ADHD isn't just one thing, it's
Right.
a continuum, or it's a spectrum. And
Yep.
so we were able to really talk through, hey, what are some things that might help your client? And I remember that I learned a ton from that conversation because
Yep.
people came up with some, I think, really great ideas for that particular client. So that's the
Yep.
value too of a community where you can bounce things off of them.
Absolutely. I just love that about this group.
So what are your favorite clients to work with? Like, are they the celiac clients that you're helping, or like what's kind of your favorite thing that you, when someone calls you, you're like, yes, I'm excited about this.
You know what? It's really hard to choose a favorite. I
Mhm.
feel like anytime I get invited into somebody's home and we get to that stage where I do a consult with them and we talk about what their goals are, I feel like that person has now become my favorite. So it's I think as soon as for me, as soon as I make a connection with somebody in that way in their personal space and they're willing to share what they need some help with and I'm able to in my brain start thinking about how that can happen. To me that's exciting and I love the one-on-one connection with the clients. So I don't think that I have a favorite. I actually have had quite a variety of clients in less than a year of business. So they all are kind of a favorite to me because they all improve their lives.
So tell me a little bit, because you have not been in business for very long. So what was the thing that made you go, yeah, I'm for sure starting an organizing business, and how has it gone for you in your first year?
Let's see. I spent a little time researching. So I sort of retired early from a very demanding career and was doing some research and both on the celiac end and how I could help people and also on the organizing end. And honestly, I came back to your podcast. I found this podcast and really it was the one that resonated with me the most. And then I think reading and hearing about some of the offerings with the class, I just finally said, you know what, I think it just clicked in my head that this was the time to do it. I think I just had gotten enough information where I said, okay, I can take a step and move beyond just listening to podcasts and reading a couple books and start actually formulating a plan. So I think that really did help. And you talked even about some business books and some of the podcasts and just a variety of things that really helped. I was part of another organization to score, which
Yeah.
helped a little bit too, which is for any business, because I kind of started out with something very broad. Like I knew I wanted to start a business and I thought I knew what, but that sort of helped me as well.
I do think sometimes, like, even just the phrase "I'm starting a business" sounds so, like, big or unwieldy or scary or any other word that you wanna use, but one of the reasons I wanted to do this series where we talk to people who did it is because it is an organizing business in particular is actually pretty easy to start. There is, if we wanna use fancy business language, there's a low
Right.
barrier to entry.
Right.
You don't have to have millions of dollars in capital. You actually don't have to have hardly any money to start it. You don't have
Mhm.
to have a building. You don't have to have supplies. You don't really have to have anything. And I just want people to know that it's an accessible business to start if it's something that you just can't get out of your head.
I completely agree. It's a service industry. You're so much of what you're doing is you're selling yourself and your knowledge and all of that. So you don't have to have something that would be a huge investment. And most people have either a cell phone or probably a laptop. Those are two things you might need, but you probably could get away with just the cell phone, to be honest.
For sure. Yeah, it really is something, and that was what I was not prepared for was, "Oh my gosh, I probably have to do like 2,000 things." No, in fact, you do not. I want people to know that there is help out there to help them get over that hump of like, "No, I can totally do this."
Yes, you can.
Yes. I frequently say if I can do it, anybody can do it. I say that about organizing. I say that about starting a business. I say that about a lot of things. Tell me a little bit about the clients that you serve. Like, are they people from all different walks of life, like ages, demographics, geography? Who do you serve?
I'm in the greater Green Bay, Wisconsin area, northeast Wisconsin. So I have had a few people ask if I would go outside the area, and I certainly would if I needed to. But I haven't in particular done that yet. It's been pretty new. We have a friend who stayed with us who wanted me to come down to Florida, which would be great since we're in
Yes.
Wisconsin. And she actually kind of got motivated staying at our house and started doing it on her own a little bit. So I even find that rewarding that even if somebody doesn't become a client and they decide to take some steps to improve their life that and then they let me know about it, I to me that just brings me a lot of joy as well. As far as clients, I would say, boy, I really have had a, a pretty broad range. Obviously, in a couple of the cases, I've been working with people with celiac disease, so that's one thing. But then otherwise, I really have had a wide range. I talked to you about having an ADHD client. I've had clients where I've done one project with them, and then they've taken it from there and moved on. I had somebody who just had me help her even just categorize some things because she had had a sudden move during a traumatic time in her life, and people helped her. And of course, that meant everybody just threw stuff in boxes. So I even got her to the point where she didn't want to necessarily and maybe couldn't afford to have somebody come and do everything with her. But we got to the point where we could just categorize so that she could take it from there. And I talked her through what to do. And then I've had clients where I've done their whole home just from a decluttering and organizing standpoint. I have a client who started out as an organizing client, ended up with a corporate move. So she became a packing client.
Love that.
And then I have a presentation I'm doing to a group in a couple weeks, and it's primarily retired and ages of people that are moving from maybe a home that they've lived in into an assisted living type situation and maybe working with even their family members. So I'm doing a presentation to a group like that as well. So I feel like a generalist, even though I have that really specific niche too.
Yeah. It's almost like you have such a specific niche that for the rest of your business, you're like, anybody, anybody.
Right.
It's kind of nice that you're able to do both of those things.
Right. And I actually had a friend who I had lunch with, and she said to me, well, what do you like doing better? Do you like doing just the organizing, or do you like working with the people specifically who have celiac? And I said, I can't answer that. I think I love them both.
But I love that about organizing, that you can get so much out of any client that you have. I have done a billion different kinds of projects. And even if the project specifically isn't about things I like or do, I really love doing paperwork. But even if I never do paperwork with a client, I still am like, oh my gosh, we did so many fun things. I genuinely like my clients. I have had very few clients where I'm like, this is not my favorite place to go. In general,
Right.
I love these people.
Right. And I agree. I think that that's why it's so enjoyable. I just feel like I get to know them,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's really nice.
There is something really personal too about, I was talking about this with someone else the other day about, I love looking at people's coffee mugs. Like for some reason, coffee mug collections just make me smile. And so that I feel like you can get a lot of someone's personality by what kind of coffee mugs they have. But
Right.
when you're working in someone's house, it's your most personal space. You
It is.
learn a lot about people.
Yeah.
You learn about their relationships with their family, and you learn
Yeah.
about, sometimes you learn secrets, and sometimes
Yeah.
you hear a lot of things about people. I feel like it's an honor to be asked into someone's home.
I totally agree. I mean, I have shed tears with
Sure.
clients, and I feel the same way. I feel like the fact that they trust me enough to come into their personal space
Yeah.
and share that personal physical space, you're going to end up really sharing some things beyond that. I feel just touched almost by
Yeah.
people allowing me to do that, and I really take that confidentiality seriously. It's personal for me too. It's a unique situation that we're allowed to be a part of.
I had a consultation yesterday where the woman specifically said, and this made me really happy. She specifically said, I really also want to have fun. Are you a fun person? And I'm like, yes, 100% I am. Like,
Melissa is fun, believe me.
I try to be fun, but like that was actually, I loved that she said that, because I said, oh, no, no, no. I really want to make this a process that is not drudgery. Like, I think
Right.
some people have this idea that, oh my gosh, it's going to be terrible and it's going to be so much hard work. And I'm like, no, we're definitely going to have fun.
Right.
We're definitely going to laugh, and we're going to have a good time, and we're going to get a ton of stuff done. So
Right. I've had a 3-hour session with somebody where we've gone through just about every emotion. And by the end, we're laughing.
yeah,
And of course, that's the fun part when you're putting things away that you're keeping
yeah,
but yeah, I've definitely had all the feelings in a short amount of time,
yeah.
including fun.
Including fun. Well, the other thing that I try to do with clients is, and I know I've talked about this before, like in our smaller group, but if a client has a good sense of humor, I will, in every house, I will have something that I will say, you are banned from buying any more of XYZ item. And like anytime I find one more of those items, I'm like, no, I had a client that had, for some reason, like 40 ice packs. And so
Oh
I happened
my.
to find another box of ice packs, and he was gone, and I texted him and I'm like, I just found more ice packs. What are we doing here? So
Right.
like sometimes like that, like there are things about people's stuff that you can find humor in and joke around with them, but also be teaching them a lesson of,
Right.
we're getting
Yes.
organized so that you don't have to rebuy all these things.
Yep. And it's like any other relationship. You get to know the person, and then you can kind of find out, who you can joke around with and about
Totally.
what, and what things you wouldn't joke around with, because
Yeah.
that's something sensitive to them. But then, yeah, as you're working together, it can actually be a really, really fun.
Yeah.
So,
So what is the split for you in your business? What do you find is really the niche that you're working in and then more general?
I would say about 20% of my time
Okay.
would be spent with that niche. I think 80 would almost be in general. Although I didn't mention this, which is so fascinating. Two of my largest clients I've had, even though they were not celiac clients, one of them had celiac disease.
Mhm.
And so even though I was not hired to help her with that, she had been diagnosed as a child. So
Yeah.
she didn't need my help with that. But she trusted me because she knew when I came into her home that I wouldn't have just eaten a cheeseburger at McDonald's
Yeah.
and gotten crumbs all over and
Right.
cross-contaminated her kitchen or whatnot. And she was pretty cautious. She had multiple health issues. So that happened. And another one who, again, did not hire me for anything to do with celiac disease, but is very comfortable with me because she has a child who has other allergies,
Okay.
not to gluten, but other food allergies. And so she just and her children really warmed up to me, and I
Mm.
don't know, it was just so I am having all these kind of crossovers, or I don't know what else to
Yeah.
call it, of situations where, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Normally, I would take this out. I would probably edit it out of the podcast. I might leave this in because I do think it's an interesting conversation. Like the dog that I'm watching is a long-term client of mine. I've been working with her for 4 years. She is a maintenance client. She trusts me. I just come into her apartment, do things. I do a ton of stuff for her, but I have
Yeah,
always loved her dog. And one time she's like, hey, she travels constantly. And she's like, would you ever want to take Max like for a weekend? I'm like, yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And it's just turned into this thing. It's lovely. My family loves the dog.
right,
I enjoy helping her out. She has given me thousands of dollars of revenue over the years of being
right,
her organizer. And it you do get close to people. And
right,
by the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, these women are crazy, they're like watching clients' children and watching clients' dogs. That's bizarre. You don't have to do this.
right,
You don't have to. But for me, it's been like a nice bonus to the process is I have really made relationships with people that
right.
are good.
And we're able to help them in even another way that we didn't expect.
The other
So,
thing too is when you think about it, you don't have to watch someone's dog, but we know a lot of things about people, right? Like sometimes, I do love doing paperwork with people. You see very sensitive information and things like that. And so becoming trustworthy to those people where they
right.
know you take that seriously. That's another part of organizing that I was not prepared for.
It makes sense when you kind of go through it and you think
Yeah.
about it.
But these are the things you learn. I think you have this idea when you start your business of what it might be like, and then you actually start doing it and you're like, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize that it was also gonna have these layers below." Is there anything that
Right.
was, like, really surprising to you when you started or something that you weren't prepared for, really?
Nothing real surprising. Maybe, I mean, I guess each client is a little bit different. So sometimes clients who think they're really disorganized aren't quite as disorganized as they think they are.
Completely.
So they hire you and they're maybe embarrassed, or which nobody should ever be embarrassed. But it it is kind of funny how sometimes you say, you know what, you're capable of this. You're close. Here's how we're going to get you there, but you probably could do it. And I think people are busy and there's multiple reasons why someone would hire an organizer. I think we've talked about this in the group before, but why do any of us hire any service? For me, I'm really not a tech savvy person, so I need a little help on that. If I'm forced to do some things, could I probably do a little bit more on my own than I think? I probably can, but I'm not afraid to admit that I'm not the most tech savvy person either. I use it every day in some capacity, but I'm certainly not a techie person. But why would anyone hire a personal trainer or
Yeah.
someone to clean their house or someone to mow their lawn? It's not because you can't work out on your own. It's not because you can't mow your lawn. It's not because you can't do these things. We're all busy people. We all prioritize what's most important and where we need to focus our energy and where we can maybe utilize some help.
Yeah.
So I don't really think it should be considered anything a whole lot different from that.
Well, I was just gonna say, as I literally stare at a painter outside my window, I could paint my own house. Like it's theoretically something I could do, but would I do as good of a job as they are doing? No. Like would I have
Right.
wanted to stand outside? It's kind of cold today and scrape the side of my house so that it looks better when it's painted? Absolutely not. I would have been like, throw some paint on it. It's
Right.
fine. But like, yeah, there are just things that you say, it makes more sense if I ask for help. And
Right.
that's something that I try to tell clients when they reach out to me is I know it actually also takes a lot sometimes for our potential clients to contact us. They
Mhm.
may have thought about contacting someone a bunch of times, but by the time they reach out, they might be in a crisis situation or something. And so I always tell them, like, I'm so glad that you reached out and asked for
Yes.
help.
I did think of something. You were asking about what I'm surprised about. When people bring me into their home, for me, I really, and I've talked about my niche and all of that, but one of the things I really do like is I really like the decluttering part of
Yeah.
organizing. Whereas some organizers, that part's okay and it needs to be done, but they really like the end product and having everything for those clients who want uniformness or they want decor help or some of that. And I think I'm okay at doing that. I think my house is decent and all of that, but I find so much joy in the decluttering part of it and really helping people to figure out that they don't need as much stuff as they have and how to get rid of it, maybe how to donate it, where to take it. And when they realize there are places that need things and they're happy with that, I love that part of the job as well. And people are surprised at that. They think, "Oh, you must not like this part of your job." And
Yeah.
like, "No, actually, I really like this part of my job."
Well, and I love that you can, in this business, you can do any number of things, right? If
Mhm.
decluttering really isn't your jam, it is also my jam. I love it. I love digging down into the psychology and asking the questions about, do you really need this and why and all that kind of stuff.
Right,
Love it. But some people really don't and they're not comfortable with it. It's okay. You don't have to be. There are so many parts of this organizing business, whereas I don't love as much making the beautiful pantry. I mean, I like it. It's great when it's
right,
done, but that's not what excites me about it. And I love that you can be any of those things on that
right,
continuum and have a business, a very successful business.
right.
So,
So
where do you see your business going? What does it look like for you 6 months from now, a year from now? Or are you just letting it happen?
there's a little bit of truth in probably both of those things. I have a vision, but I also am letting it happen and kind of giving myself permission to allow that because I've had clients come to me that maybe I wouldn't have expected at some point. And so I'm finding a lot of joy in that. I'm finding a lot of joy in learning some of the nuances and just delving into some of the things just to learn more. I just think it's fun. But I would say in terms of what I envision, it might be easier to say what I envision not happening. So what I don't envisioning for myself personally is building a team. I have managed a lot of people over the course of different parts of my career, and I'm just ready to not be managing other people at this point. Really like the freedom of just scheduling and being able to work directly with people as well so that I don't need that layer of extra people involved. If I need some help, certainly I have plenty of contacts where I could hire some subcontractors and things like that. But I envision myself as a solo entrepreneur and working, I'm hoping hard enough, but not to the point where I'm completely overwhelmed. So I'm trying to temper that a little bit. I would like to probably get a little bit better at, I love kind of old fashioned marketing of myself. I
Okay, tell me a
love
little bit more.
yeah, so or at least that's what I'm calling it. I mean, I love one-on-one contacts. I love just telling people what I do and just being authentic and talking about it as they ask questions. I can do a presentation, I can talk one-on-one, I can talk to a group, all of that and talk about what I do. I don't love social media. I'm going to
Yeah,
be honest.
you don't have to.
Yeah, and I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to post some things a little more regular. And again, not because I can't do it. I don't know. It's not my what I feel is my personality or my gift as much. And part of that might just be self-consciousness of putting something out there for the whole world versus being in touch with people on a personal level or even a group setting where you're doing a presentation, making eye contact with people. And
Yeah.
I like all of that. And so that's the part of my business that I'm still a little bit unsure of how I'm going to move forward with some of that. And so, but I have an accountability partner as well that through this
Yeah.
group that we're starting to talk about some of those things too.
I love accountability partners, but I do want to go back to something you said because I do think it's important for people to know because so we talked about this is a low barrier to entry business. It doesn't take a lot of money to get started or anything like that. But what I find is sometimes there are barriers to entry that are in our own heads and we
Mhm.
can't get past it. And for a lot of people, Social media is one of those where they say, "Oh my gosh, well, I'm gonna have to post on social media 72 times a day, and I have to learn reels, and I'm not comfortable with any of that. I don't want any of that." And what I want people to know more than anything is there are a lot of ways to do this business. There are a lot of ways to get clients. And
Mhm.
being authentic into what actually works for you. What I will tell you doesn't work is you can't say, "I don't wanna do any of these things." Like,
Right,
I
right.
don't wanna have a website, I don't wanna have social media, I don't wanna tell people what I do, I don't wanna network. You do have to do something and find
Right.
something that works for you, but you don't have to say, "I'm paralyzed by the thought of having to do an Instagram, therefore I will not start my business." You don't have
Right.
to do that.
Right. Right. Start with what you're comfortable with,
Yes.
and then you maybe will build on that.
What I would say too is what you were describing as old-fashioned marketing. I just like to call it analog marketing, where it's
That's
not
a good way. Oh, I've not thought of that. That's a good term.
it's just that you're choosing to connect with people on a more personal one-on-one level versus one-to-many level, and presentations are great. I personally love doing presentations. I also know there are probably people listening to this that were like, "I would rather never have to talk in front of a huge group. I'll talk in front of anyone."
Yeah.
But that's a great way to get out there if it's something that you love.
Or at least are comfortable with, you
Yeah.
know. So,
Also, there are tons of groups that are looking for good presentations. So if it
mhm.
is something that you enjoy, then I definitely encourage you to reach out and think about that. Whatever your niche is or whatever core audience is, there are always groups that are looking for people to speak.
Yep.
If someone's out there going, "I'm just a podcast listener, I'm maybe thinking about starting a business, but I'm not sure." What kind of advice would you give to people?
The only advice I can think of is advice that was given to me over the years. Just keep your mind and your heart open. If you're feeling that there's something out there that you're wanting to do, continue to research it, continue to read about it, to think about it, to talk to people. And it's going to click at some point, just like it did for me. All of a sudden, I was in this dilemma of, I know I want to start a business. I'm ready to start something on my own. I don't know exactly what it is. These are some things I'm interested in. This is what's been affecting my life personally.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I saw an intersection.
Yeah.
And it literally was a light bulb moment. I don't know if that will happen for everybody, but don't give up. If you've got something, listen to your instincts, listen to your internal voice, whatever it is that you call that for yourself, listen to that and just keep an open mind to it. Do some research, do some educating of yourself. If nothing else, you learn something new and maybe something bigger will come of it, and maybe you'll be able to move forward.
When I was thinking about starting this business, which at the time I thought was crazy, I was like, "I think this is a crazy idea. I don't know what I'm thinking. I really just need to I need to just go find a marketing job somewhere. What am I doing?" And I still like a paper planner. So see, I can be
Oh,
analog.
yes.
And I had this paper planner that had this quote that said, "If you can't stop thinking about it, start working on it." And that one little quote, I still think about it a lot. To me, at that time, it meant go start your business, but that now it
Right.
can mean any number of things. Like, oh, you have this thing that you keep meaning to optimize. Let's go start it. But I think that if it keeps being in your head,
Yes.
think about how do I put this into action.
That's a perfect quote. You articulated, I think, my thoughts in a much more effective way than what I did, but that's essentially it.
I just stole
And
it from my planner. So
so there's no new idea, right? We're
no,
all just getting ideas
that is a
from the
fact.
universe.
It's kinda like I tell people, I was like, "Oh my gosh, if you see something on my social media that you like, please take it and use it. I don't care. I don't have anything proprietary or new or exciting there. Just take it."
That is one thing I have to say about this group as well, whether it's your coaching or the podcasts or the Facebook groups or the classes themselves, everything is everything is so supportive. Nobody is saying, well, I'm not going to quite answer that question completely because I might give away my secret. There's
Yeah,
none of that.
yeah,
There's all the information is shared so openly.
yeah.
And even though we're all in the same industry, I feel like we're all just helping each other rise up and be better. And that isn't hurting anyone
No.
to do that. It's not really competitive, it's really collaborative.
Some of the people that I like the most in this industry that I'm personal friends with are actually technically competitors of mine. And I mean, like I did an interview that you guys will hear either before or after this with Corey McDougald of Meat and Potatoes. She's
Yep.
practically in my backyard. Several organizers in the Twin Cities areas, like they're my friends. We hang out. We talk about business. I
Yep.
refer business to them. If I can't do something, I send it their way. We say it a lot about collaboration over competition, but it really is a thing. No one is gatekeeping information.
Right. Exactly. So I mean, if you're thinking at all about somehow joining this community in any of the ways you can, highly consider it because it's just a really helpful group.
We love our
Love it.
people. They're good people. We're like we
Yes.
have a good time, we help each other, but it really is just nice to have a community of people that really get exactly what you're talking about versus when I try to tell a story to my husband and I have to explain like 200 things and by then he's asleep, right? I don't
I
have to
tried
explain it.
to have my husband listen to some podcasts in the
Yeah.
car when we were traveling recently, and after one or two, he's like, "Huh, could we listen to some music now?"
So I put this on my Facebook, but I realized I probably haven't told this story on here. But my children are hilarious and they're very nice children, but they can also be savages in the best way. And one
Right.
day my husband said, he's like, "Oh, I saw that you posted a new podcast. Like I'll take a listen to it." And my older daughter goes, "Why would you listen to her more than you had to?" And I was like, "Oh, ouch." And I was like, "Hey, people actually like say that they like listening to me." And she's like, "Yeah, that's what they tell you." So
Hey, the numbers prove it.
listen, I have data. People do
That's
like to
right.
listen. So, yeah, by the way, my husband sometimes tells me stories about his job and I'm like kind of glazing over. So, it's nice to
Right.
have a community where you could be like, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what happened to me today." So,
Right. Agreed.
well, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people
Sure.
find you if people want to look up all of your information? Where are you?
Well, as you know, I am not the
Analog marketer.
technology guru, but you can email me, Julie at healthyhomeorganizing.com. If you do check social media, I do have a Facebook and an Instagram. So I do have some information on my Facebook page, probably has a little bit more information on that. And it's Healthy Home Organizing. I'm based in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So that would be a way to find me. And you can call too, 920-680-8667 or text.
You can call Julie. You cannot call me. I do not like the phone.
Yeah, that's right. You don't like the phone.
I do
See,
not
I
like the
still
phone.
do. I
Oh,
still like
lots
the
of people
phone.
do. I'm an outlier. I know I'm an outlier. So I saw a hilarious thing the other day. I think it was a tweet that said, "I accidentally put on an email today, if you have questions, please hesitate to call me." And it's supposed to say, "Don't hesitate," but she's like, "I just left it that way." And I'm like, "Yep." So, by the way, I will talk to you guys on the phone. I really will. It's just not my preferred method of communication. But
Right.
Julie will chat with you anytime.
That's right.
Love
That's
it.
right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really
Sure.
appreciate it so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it and appreciate everything you do.
Thank you so much for listening in to the Pro Organizer Studio podcast. If you'd like to get our roadmap for success as a pro organizer, head straight to www.poroadmap.com.